We back. Episode 67, Lyrical Ones. Here we are yet again. Another week. And this week, as many weeks, Affluent, how are you doing?
Hello, sir. I am well. We are recording on Wednesday, first day of autumn, the autumnal equinox, as they say. Um, Q4 for some people who start their fiscal year in January. Well, I guess no, Q4 is actually next month, but that's cool. Um, it's a good day, man. It's a lot of ups and downs. It's a lot of colorism showing its gruesome, disgusting head. Um, Discrimination and racism is thriving in the United States of America. I am wearing a comfortable shirt, you know,
Comfort is a must.
comfortable in those, comfortable in my uh, city's team colors, the former city. You know, it is what it is. They play somewhere near here, but I'm doing well, and I'm really praying for folks who are just struggling with uncertainty, dealing with loss, and my heart really goes out to those folks who are feeling like they're not sure which way to go next or how their world is going to turn out. Um, you got folks from the Caribbean who have family who are citizens, seeking asylum, seeking refuge in the United States, and they're we got saw footage of them being brutalized, um, and detained, and you know reports of like verbal abuse. And as much as that is hurting my heart, it also puts me in a state of awareness and gratitude, because like I think when we can see the injustice, like we can address it. And there's a lot of stuff that's hidden, and I think I just kind of navigate from a place of hope. Like we can still figure this out. Like if you vacuum in and you keep finding dirt, that's a sign to keep vacuuming. And so like that's the kind of space I'm in, is like if we clean up stuff slowly but surely, just in our perspective of the world and the community that that we coexist with, we still got more stuff to clean if we still keep finding stuff, coming up from the woodworks. So that's where I'm at right now. Just a place of hope that we can continue to clean and heal and support each other. How you doing on episode 67?
Right on. You know, you brought up a lot of points of the same thought processes that I'm currently having regarding similar situations. Speaking about what is going on when it comes to the United States treatment of Haitian people, right? Seeing pictures that striking that like strike the thoughts of historical books that I've seen growing up. Right, this is modern times. This is happening right now, and I'm looking at these books, and these books in my memory are now being reflected back at me in the present on Twitter, on Instagram, through celebrities who are appalled, who people are appalled. And you know, it's maybe people forgot, or maybe you're thinking about it. Um, you know, their leadership was assassinated, and amongst some of the people who assassinated Haiti's leadership, there were some Americans. And you have to think critically, because oftentimes news will come and it'll pass, and then there's news that will stay and it'll last for a while. And I thought, when it's so close to us that their government is being threatened, that there was an you know like, maybe it's my own bias, but I feel like the news didn't cover it as much as what they've been covering for now. Seems like years now.
Right.
It's not that we minimize one for the other, it's that we give everything its proper place and time, because now we're seeing the aftermath of the government falling apart in Haiti, and people trying to seek refuge in a place that
Right.
has, you know, always marketed itself, has projected around the world freedom, right? Come here if you want to be successful, right? America's the way. America, the young country, the democracy, and the stature that it holds, and the clout that it has in the minds of the world. And when people start to choose to come, right, based off of situations that honestly feel like, is some form of negligence, someone's responsible. Someone who's a representative
That's
of
right.
this country had some hand or some knowing or some misplaced responsibility, right? Where they're like, I'm going to do this and this is what's going to happen. And now here we are, right? Where we got people who are seeking asylum, seeking some sense of safety in our own inadvertent way. We've caused this, right? Like, recently I was seeing something about slavery, modern slavery, and how a lot of laws will, we're like, oh, we're trying to address slavery, but our laws support and uphold slavery, right? And that's a modern slavery. I'm not talking about 400 years ago. I'm not talking about 300 years ago. I'm not talking about 200 years ago. I'm talking about right now. When we think of human
Right.
trafficking, when we think of people who work illegally or who are indentured servants or are trying to escape one place to come to another place, and they find themselves in a very horrible situation where the means of survival is they now have to deal with some person, some form of entity that tells them, you owe me money, right? You want to come out here and live here, and you want to live illegally, or you want to be, you didn't follow the process of immigration, right? We got you, we smuggled you into the country. There's so many different layers in that, but that's still slavery. People working
Right.
who don't have rights, who
Yep.
don't have freedoms, right? And so, yeah, it's definitely on my mind just as much as on the most, what you were just talking about it before this, right? One of the most popular artists of this generation in this time period being compared to, in my ignorant mind, one of the most popular entities of all time. So yeah, I'm all over the place. I'm a spectrum of many thoughts.
I feel that. I thank you for that response, and really bringing the focus to our, I don't know, like some of our neighbors, and then some our our country people, fellow citizens, and what they're going through as a community, you know, has been continuous in a lot of ways, as they have, you know, been one of the only countries to free themselves, you know, from, slavery, as a country. Um, you know, before, someone came to rescue them, you know, they extradited, you know, foreign control. And as much as the weather and catastrophic events has you know depleted their infrastructure, they continually show up, strong and independent, amongst those who are paying attention in the world. And we're in a time where you know people are trying to return to some normalcy um, in their lives, and the normalcy that they're looking for, has been stashed away in the archives. And we won't really be returning to that. But it doesn't stop people from looking for it. And as they start to ingratiate, habits, both analog and digital, um, we really will need some type of debriefing on how to enter back into community and society with people, with each other. And as we figure that out, we also need to think about how we as a country, right, are going to show up in community for the world as things change. Because there are a lot of countries that are, still locked down, countries that rely on foreign labor, from other countries, and immigrants make up, or work visa employees make up a large portion of some countries' workforce. And when they can't bring in those workers, sometimes because some of it is in Europe and then some of it is in Asia as well, where smaller economies, you know, kind of recruit and prepare, the citizens to be able to work in other countries, to send back, you know, funds for their families. And we got to see that, folks is trying, but also there are people who don't want to work in some of these countries because it's not safe for them. And in America, we get the luxury to kind of say, "Oh, we're going to work somewhere else. I'm going to work in a different company, work in a different industry, work in a different city." People are just relocating across, the workforce climate, and you can bet that the 86 people that were, detained were or deported were willing to work to support their families, and now they have to deal with some sort of criminal record, you know some sort of sickness, or mental health issues, physical sickness or mental health issues, as they navigate the wildlife of new places, or newly uncovered places like Caribbean, countries like Haiti just like have been hit by catastrophe, natural disaster after catastrophe. And a lot of times we only see the end result, or sometimes we see a snapshot. We say, "Oh, somebody's on vacation back here. Things must be cool." And in our own lives, there's escapism that we're trying to, navigate and portray to some extent, in social media, right? Where, people are like trying to figure out their own value by how it compares to other people's lives. And if we're going to do that for our own lives, it really shouldn't be a surprise of how, we're using the media in social media and the difference between one trauma or harm and another, and saying this one is more valuable because of its rarity or uniqueness when it comes to you know public landscape. And feel like some people are doing that right now with what's happening, as far as our neighbors from the Caribbean go. Some folks are really trying to use a scale to figure out, who is worth being saved, who is worth being protected, who is worth being cared for and allowed to come into the country freely. Um, things are changing, and I look forward to this generation that wears Crocs over the, you know, 20 to 30 pairs of shoes that their parents may got bought for them, and all they want to do is wear Crocs all day. Like, it was really children who made Crocs cool, because it was celebrities back in the day who, like, celebrity chefs were wearing Crocs, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even longer than that, more like 7, 8 years ago. Folks was wearing Crocs, and people was getting made fun of for wearing them, but they were wearing them for out of comfort and some form of you know kind of rebellion, against the social norm of paying for expensive shoes. And I imagine that there's going to be a lot of future parents that are happy that all they got to do is buy Crocs, and there's the children will wear them, day after day, whether they're in school, out of school. And as people navigate again, like what's right and what's good, and who is doing what in terms of industry for our country, then right, the tunes will change. But when folks is like, oh well, it's just a whole bunch of black people over there, with a few good hotels. Yeah, they speak Spanish, but why would they want to leave my their vacation destination, come to America? Like, we don't necessarily want them there, but really, you know, it's just a chase, right? We got to chase peace, we got to chase, sovereignty, we got to chase healing, and we got to chase community. We got to chase hope, we got to chase trust. And the story of immigration into America has always been one of hope. It's always been one of stepping up to the challenge and saying yes, or doing the thing that no one else would do to stand out. Because that's, part of what, America's, upbringing and heritage is, right? Doing what someone else won't do to find what you need.
You triggered a lot of thoughts when you said all that. Yeah, bang bang. So because I'm looking at it from multiple angles, right? I'm looking at it on the we are in a new era, right? We've all mass on era, as you can see, mass on mass era, right? Where there is, speaking out of my own ignorance, and this is a tool for engagement. As much as I'm doing my best to hold space and to speak, to give peace and some type of uplifting energy to those that need it, because that's how I came to this, right? Was out of the pain, trauma, anguish, anger, energy that was 2020 and George Floyd. I've always been one to protest in my own way. Protesting is in my blood. It's in me as a form of life, a way of life. And the protest doesn't stop um, because I'm with others, right? Or when I'm by myself. The protesting is a practice that I engage in through discipline. It's almost militant, and I haven't been in the military. I've had family in the military, and I've always refined my discipline because it wasn't about following, as my mother had told me often. It was about being your own person, right? You don't need to fit in. You don't need to go with the flow. You can go against the tide. You can fight against the waves. You can choose to do that, and it's better off that you do that because that's when change happens. And I think about it and I zoom out of that, right? Change. If I'm not going with the flow, then I am the change. If I'm fighting against the tide, then I am the change. I am the difference in the energy or the force that is coming to me. I'm the difference. So, working in the community has been central to my development as a person, my sense of responsibility. The reason why things don't happen as I maybe had dreamed or maybe have wanted is because I've also had to protest within my own family. I've always had to protest amongst my community in the way that my level of care for them means that I have to give an extra level of energy or a level of exertion. But because of my protest, I have the extra energy to give. It means my discipline can allow me to put my pride to the side and put my ego at the door to say, I'm going to serve you, right? As I serve my community and I do that as a job, I also serve my family and I serve my community beyond the scope of payment. I'm saying all that because when it comes to this situation in particular, we are all heartbroken and enraged and saddened and in anguish to see pictures and imagery of people who look like our own family members being chased on horseback through bodies of water, who are witnessing families being separated and torn apart because there's single mothers and children's being allowed, but the fathers, the uncles, the brothers are being left behind. Where the amount of energy and protest, right? And I've been critical of protests. It's necessary for me to be critical because I've done it. I'm not saying it as a bystander. I'm saying it as someone who's engaged in the practice and the routine of going out into the streets and marching, of showing up at my political party's, um, place of business, if you will, the different public forums to discuss the issues and to speak out or to listen to what is going on. I've done it. I've done it. I've garnered the most change when I've decided to change my life. Because I can't force nobody to do nothing. I can't push nobody to do nothing. All I can do is what's in front of me, what I have the ability to handle and grasp. Now, it's not to say that I can't provoke people, inspire people, because I have. I've inspired people to pursue a lifestyle and a livelihood that makes them more happy, that grants them an access of joy, because that's not often seen, right? Often it's do this because it benefits you monetarily, and I find ways to not only have people gain the monetary value but also gain the sense of well-being, because I know what it means to grow up in an unhealthy household where your mind isn't right because you are chasing a dollar, you're not chasing happiness, right? I've experienced it and I've witnessed it and I've gone through it. But I also was raised in the same household where Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King are overlooking my bed every night, and I'm reminded of who they are because of the conversations I'm having with my family. Right, I'm talking about civil wars happening in a Central American country and the impact and the trauma that's happened to my father and seeing how that's played out. And so I don't lose sight of that because I'm in it. I didn't get an option to get out. There was no choice for me to make. I was in it. So when I'm witnessing what's happening with people who look like my family, it's aggravating. when the conversation ain't there, the energy isn't there. I made so much music based off of the energy that I was surrounded by from my fellow people who were like, this is wrong. I had friends who I've tried to get civically engaged for my whole life, and they went out and marched. And I was so proud and so happy. And there was this moment in between it all where I was like, I hope this lasts. I hope this is the change. But as time weared on, things moved forward. I seen people regress into old behaviors and old practices. And I was like, yeah, I couldn't place an expectation on the moment to say this is what's going to happen. I was thankful and appreciative to see what was going on, but I have to trek forward in my own fights against the struggle for the freedoms of everyone, not just for the freedoms of some. I've gone as far as even changing the way that I say things on this podcast to be more inclusive to more people because I understand the way the political structure works and the way the game is played in this country is that I have to have more people on my team. So when the numbers start to come together, the fight isn't a fight of one amongst the many, it is the many against the some. That is the reality. Because when I see what happens to people from Haiti in the United States, I think, how does the change come about where this doesn't happen? I got to get people bought into an ideology, a philosophy, a belief, a way of living to change things. Because if I do it their way, that means I'm ready to kill and I'm ready to let people die. If I do it their way. And when I say they, I'm talking about the people who are in control, who have been in power and continue to create this perception of what life is and what it's supposed to be. Right? So I have to then say, okay, this is the way that I'm choosing to go about it differently. And I can't help but think about, like, let's look at it like this, right? Alabama, a state, Bama, right?
That's right.
Alabama, right? More people died than were born in 2020 in Alabama. In Alabama,
Yeah.
we don't have space. We don't have space for people from another country. We don't have space. We don't have room, right? We're not a socialist country, but the same multi-million dollar companies that are relying on their entry-level workers who far outweigh or outnumber the CEOs and executive level management, those workers are reliant on social services to
Right.
continue to work in an entry-level job. Yet we're not a socialist country. We're not a socialist country. We're a capitalistic country who allows socialist behaviors and techniques to exist only to maintain the capitalistic greed for people to not have to give up their control over finance, over money, right? I don't think it's anything wrong with money. I know there is something wrong with people. Not everyone, but there is a vast number of people where there is something wrong. And I'm not saying wrong as in they are wrong, even though they can be at times. I'm saying there's something that they experienced or they've learned or they developed that causes them to make choices that harm others.
Mm.
And of course, right, it's that survival. Survival is the shoe that fits the wearer. It's not for everybody, it's just the person who's wearing it that day. Right? If your leadership does an action that you view as harmful or wrong or against their own words, and they can tell you in a convincing manner, right, that, well, I get to do it because I
Mm.
did XYZ.
Right.
Yet at the same time, there's people acting out and doing things that aren't in leadership positions. And instead of trying to get to the root, we go into the systemic thing, not in what is the difference, but what is more of the norm, right? What is more of the norm? We have this law enforcement on horseback, which provokes imagery of slavery and the 300 or 400 years ago in the United States where people were trying to run and escape and were caught by people on horseback. And they're like, oh, it wasn't whips down at the border with the Haitians. Well, it looked like it to me, even if it's not. If it looked like a duck, it talk like a duck, it walk like a duck. You could tell me that it's a goose, but to me, they very similar birds. And that's the thing that I'm like seeing right now is how there's all this fluidity amongst the layers, right? There's this ability to go within and without, to go inside and come out of it. And people, I'm just saying as a plea for those that's listening that are engaged, that even care enough about themselves, at the core, love yourself, take care of yourself, take your vitamins, go for a walk, drink plenty of water. I hope and pray that you're in a situation where you can get sleep. Like it dawned on me, I'm just now able to start getting sleep because my mother passed away. And the reason why I say that is because I had seen my mother's health decline over the course of a decade or more, about 14 years. And in that time period, I realized my anxiety and my thoughts and the way that I live was a protest into what she was going through by me eating healthy, by me exercising, by me trying to engage in therapeutic behaviors to be a representative for her to see that she still has the ability to do. But it was a long, hard fight. We got
Yeah.
some wins and I ultimately took a big loss. Had to accept it as much as I didn't like it or didn't want it, had to confront how it made me feel and still makes me feel. But as I've gone through the process of grief and acceptance, I've started to develop the ability to gain control over my sleep patterns, which again, right, you will operate out of whatever you have available. And now I feel like I'm operating at another level or another frequency because I'm able to gain control over something that seems so abstract that I longed for so much sleep.
Right. Yeah.
But at the forefront, I've tried to maintain some type of peripheral vision, if not forward vision, on my health, on my well being. And I'm saying that because, yeah, I'm still in protest. I'm still in protest. Yes, I'm going to eat my healthy vegetables, whether they're raw or they're steamed. Not for a long period of time. I don't steam a lot.
That's right.
But it
For
is a
sure.
thing where I'm thinking about, right, my longevity, right? And I think about how I'm able to impact those around me in a sustainable and healthy fashion. Not just a flash in the pan, not just because it looks good for the gram, right? I wear a mask online to keep a boundary between my privacy, my livelihood, because it is not available, it's not for sale. I'm not putting it up or offering it to anyone. I understand there's a game that I have to play as a rapper, and I'm playing it how I see fit,
Right.
right? I'm not going to sit up here and put on other than this mask. I'm not going to have to put on a facade and and claim to be somebody when the truth is uncovered, when it's discovered all the years later, oh, this is who he really was. Because what will happen is it'll only be a refinement of who I am. It won't be a departure from what you've come to know.
Mm.
And the thing is, right, these are the lessons I've learned from others that I've seen. Some repeat word for word, trait for trait, move for move. Me, I've always been about innovation. Maybe I'm part alien. That's just me. Where y'all see a G5 plane, I'm looking for a spaceship. And I'm saying that because it's easy to settle for what's in front of you instead of looking far beyond your own sight. Your imagination can oftentimes create the pathway or the roadmap to what it is you're really looking for if you give yourself the faith, if you have the belief in yourself. But before all that faith and before that belief, you have to have that love because what we're
Right.
witnessing right now,
Mm-hmm.
through the escapism, through the disenchantment, through the avoidance, we can say we care, but
Mm.
when I look at the actions, it's very difficult to know what does care mean in this time? Right? So if I make it about the person, if I make it about the individual, if you have the ability to access this podcast, then that means you have some level of benefit, some luxury, some privilege where you have access to hopefully boundless forms of information. Oftentimes we ask what or why, and we never take the time to look it up. And I'm saying in this moment, when it comes to self care, when it comes to self love, when it comes to self healing, self soothing, I think it's necessary just because if I'm reading the room, the guilty faces and the looks of awkwardness, the discomfort, the uncertainty, people who are banking on something being there when we just went through a whole period of time where in a matter of days that all got taken away from us. There was a point in time when you couldn't find toilet paper. And you think that it's going to be in your rear view. Never imagining, see, like I said, I imagined it. I was like, oh, I'm ready for this. We good. Not because I'm paranoid, because I mean, let's think about it, right? Doctor Strange thought about every single way that they could win this war, and they found one. That's how I feel. It's a war on my own self love, my own capacity for healing, for my own peace. It's a war on that, right?
Yeah.
All the distractions, all the temptations, all the different ways for me to indulge in something that can turn from a necessary portion into a disproportionate toxic poison. Dosage makes the poison. And so, I think about it. I think about Haiti. I think about Alabama. I think about the pain, the struggle, and strife that people go through, and how I'm going to continue to provide options and opportunities to people who otherwise wouldn't know or don't have access or won't be able to see. Because when I needed it, I didn't have it. So when I was able to get it, I'm going to share it. I'm going to give it away. I'm not going to sugarcoat, not going to hold back. I'm going to make sure it's available, it's accessible. Because it may seem crazy, but crazy has already happened. A country that had a president had their president assassinated. And because most people who are in political positions are not flawless, untouched, pristine individuals, everyone got a little bit of murkiness on them.
Right.
So there's nothing to say that in that crazy event of it happening in another country, it can't happen here.
Hmm.
And it doesn't even have to be an assassination, right? It could be your rights and your civil liberties. It could be you willfully giving them away. It could be you signing up because there was an attack. I'm going to give up some of my freedom just to feel a little bit safe.
Yeah.
And here we are now in this new era where every way you look, you can find some level of corruption or some type of deceit. And now you have to ask yourself, how much are you comfortable with and what are you ready to take on? Because, yeah, it is a time now where there's extreme divisiveness. People can't hear each other unless they're saying or singing in the same tune on the same choir. People so consumed with what they feel and what they want for themselves that they forget other people got something they want for them.
Yeah.
And the
It's
thing
just
is, it ain't about a matter of scarcity,
no.
right? It's just the fear.
Yeah. Well, people got to advocate for each other just to, create the community that they operating in fear with. Like, and the fear is not going to decrease if people continue to look out for themselves. Right, the fear is going to stay and likely increase as people build barriers, keep people, keep each other away. And the barriers are not physical barriers, right? The barriers of understanding, the barriers of dialogue, right? And those barriers, right, exist again out of fear, that scarcity mindset, where somebody's gonna take from me, right? Or I'm gonna lose, or like it's my fault that I'm not doing enough for my family. It's my fault that I'm not doing enough for the finances that I want. Um, but because it's my fault, also means that I can control it and I can I can affect things by responding in fear, um, and people just thinking they're going to run out of opportunities, going to run out of friends, going to run out of family, going to run out of love, going to run out of money, um, going to run out uh, of security and safety, going to run out of food, and it's keeping people from sharing. It's keeping people from contributing to each other's lives from their experience. It's keeping people from supporting each other. Like I know a lot of people that would just benefit from interacting with someone else who looks different from them because they will say, "Well, my family's from here, but your family's not. When y'all didn't have anything, right? How did y'all navigate the world? Right? How can I be in a mindset similar to that? You know, even if my culture and my heritage, it's only taught me enough to navigate some things in my life. Right? People got to ask those questions and then say, right, how can I leave that fear behind? I really like that you know mentioned that.
I mean, I feel like sometimes we see an issue and it's so far away from ourselves that we often don't tie the bond. Like, what's the bond between what's going on over there and what's going on with me? You
Right.
know, like I've seen in so many ways people deny they have the fear and then act out of the fear, right? Like, nah, I ain't scared. I ain't afraid of that. I ain't afraid of that. So why you ain't do it? Because I don't want to. But you said this is what you want, and to get that thing that you want, you have to do that thing that you say you don't want to do. So do you really want it? And then when we talk again, you're gonna mention it again. You're gonna say how that's what you want, right? Or it'd be nice to have, right? And then it becomes this thing that becomes so distant and far off that it's no longer attainable because you've now redefined your practice and the way that you do things. That yeah,
I was
it's
just
nice
talk-
to have.
I was just talking about that. It's like we don't always align our priorities to match our desires, and it's really hard to make progress toward your goals or toward your desires or your wants when your priorities don't reflect what it takes to achieve or acquire or live into those things. And a lot of times, switching the priorities, right, then right changes your relationships, right? Switching your priorities then changes your job. Switching priorities and changes where you live, changes whether you interact with your family or not, interact with the people in your history and your past or not. Changing your priorities then can often make space and create like if your previous set of priorities were keeping you from your goals or allowing you to be apart from your goals, then the shift in priorities should then make space for that goal or get the ball rolling toward that goal if it's really a goal, if it's really a desire, right? A shift in priorities, a shift should only come about because it's making space for the priorities. So the shift is needed, right, for some reason, right? The shift is needed because, right, my family need food, right? So sometimes the shift, right, is right is grand theft, right? Sometimes that's the priority, that's the action that results out of priority shift. Say, well, it's a little bit more important, right, and more urgent that I get money to feed my family, and right? The job application and background check process, right, is too long and too dicey or too risky. But it's okay if I get this car note when I don't really got a job. Maybe I could stay on the bus for a few more weeks, or to save up some money. But it's too risky for me to fail a background check than it is for me to, you know, do something to jeopardize my physical, mental freedom. And folks to be working, running with that fear. It's like, oh well, it'll be better if I, right, invest my money into a 401k that I don't necessarily have control of what industries the 401k, you know, supports or invests in. It's more risky, it's less risky for me to do that than it is for me to do a little bit of studying, you know, for a week, study for a week on what are, safe and reliable, less volatile industries that are, long lasting and thriving in the socioeconomic climate that we're in. It's more risky for me to do that and study and choose it myself than to have somebody do it for me.
It's wild you say that because I've seen it many times. I've this is really real, really real. I've been able to be of support to others and remembering the times out of my own pride, right? You say what you want about it. Everybody has their perspective on pride, but my pride for me was self-reliance, independence, right? Because I had come to know from the community I was in that the people around me I couldn't really rely on. I couldn't really turn to and ask for help. So I had to figure out in the most intuitive fashions, how do I get what I need on my own, right? Is that okay based off of the budget that I have and I have access to, right? Am I paying attention to the scope of like deficit versus what I'm profiting from, right? What am I giving and what am I getting? How much of this do I need and how much of this do I want? Because there were moments when I dipped and maybe it was about recognizing, and not everyone has access to these skills. So these are skills you have to develop, but they all intertwine. I have a landlord who I have a relationship with who I've gone out of my way for, and I've been able to provide support, energy, resources beyond money, right? I live with my landlord, so I develop a relationship and I make myself flexible enough to see how can I tend to what it is that they may need, right? Lend a hand, right? Know my boundaries because I can't do it all the time, but I do it enough to develop a relationship where I'm more valuable than the rent that I pay, right? Now, see, the technological wizards, they didn't like what Affluent had to say, and so they're gonna let me run on until Affluent come back. But this is something I want people to pay attention to because oftentimes we'll associate the monetary value away from our own personal self value. So if I'm paying rent and that has a monetary value, and then me as a person, I have a value based off of who I am, how I treat you, how I talk to you, how I make you feel. The value of who I am in your eyes a lot of times will exceed the value of whatever the cost that I'm providing monetarily. And in the regards to my landlord, it did happen where I got ready to move out and they asked me, do you want me to cut your rent? What do I got to do to keep you? They wanted to find a way to keep me versus having me be gone because they understood the cost of having me was greater than the cost of what I was paying. Now I'm saying that because there were moments when I didn't have money, when I didn't have enough to cover my full rent. But based off of my consistency over time, where there was more times I had it than I didn't, there was more times that I was able to show up and support beyond just paying rent than times that I didn't, or when I did do it, those times were of significance enough to show my quality of character and merit that when I didn't have it, that direct relationship was the support that I needed because this is now a new person within my community. We go from being landlord and tenant to now, well, we are friends, we're colleagues. We see each other as people, not just as you provided me with a service or a resource or a space, and I'm providing you with some monetary attributes or contributions. And that's the thing. That was something that I didn't do intentionally because the only thing I was trying to do was make sure I had it, that I had it consistently. Right? It wasn't my intention to take advantage of that because that's what I was trying to avoid. But I was young, I was stupid, I had some inconsistencies. I had some practices that I was refining that I had to learn what are the luxuries I need to cut back on and what are the necessities that I need to hold tight to. And as I refined that process and I learned from those mistakes because I didn't let it happen a bunch of times. It happened must have, in 5 years, it must have happened like twice. But on those couple moments, right, there was a lesson for me to learn where it's like, okay, this is what I want for myself, and this is what I don't want for myself. And in this moment of pain and anguish, of embarrassment or shame, or me feeling like I didn't do what I needed to do for myself, for my livelihood, I'm being irresponsible. Maybe I bought them shoes and I went and hung out with my people and I bought some things I didn't need to buy. Had some experiences that, as much as I enjoyed, I could have prolonged or waited or held off from. There were things that I did that impacted what was going on. And the impact was not something that made me happy. Have to make a change. In 5 years, I had more consistency with showing up and doing what was necessary than I did going the other way. Now, again, stepping back outside of myself, I realized there's a certain level of privilege I had where I had access to seeing what discipline looks like, what sacrifice looks like. What does it mean when someone is willing to forego the luxuries to provide for me, right? What I need, right? Because there were times when I was like, we not rich, but I feel so full. I feel like I got so much because of the relationships that I have with the family that I'm with and what they provide me in terms of safety, security, and attention. Right. So I got to see certain disciplines, certain actions, certain behaviors, and learn both the plus and the minuses. And fortunately, it benefited me enough where, yeah, I could live away from them, where I could develop these new practices to be self sufficient, independent, and do what I need to do. And now, when I think about where I'm at and I think about how I've been able to show up for more people over time, where it's like, oh man, I don't got this, or can you help me out? I can help you out. I'm not thinking about how you gonna pay me back because I'm in a place where I don't have to think about it. Because I went through those things, because I refined my processes, because I had to refine the 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 things that I needed, the necessities in it all. So I could get to this point now where I'm not hurting like that. I'm not saying I'm in some grand space, but I'm better off than my peers and my contemporaries. That I'm in a position now where I'm able to do more than I was in the past. And I'm only going to continue because it's funny when you say that whole 401k thing, right? I had invested in one of those and I learned, and I'm still learning. It's still a learning process. So this isn't a one for one translation because, again, I'm still learning. But I learned that because I can get a payout from my previous job, a cash payout, right? I could take my old retirement and move it to my new retirement. I could go and open up my own individual retirement account, right? I can open up a brokerage account, right, which is just an investment account. Or if I structure a business, I can invest it into my business, which means that My retirement ain't for me to retire. My retirement is for me to gain ownership over my life now. Because some people, it's okay. Like you want a retirement and you gonna work for it. That's you. That's great. Do that. Be focused on what that means, right? You have to navigate maybe the relationships, the personalities, the nuances, the egos, the insecurities of the workspace, and the people who may create boundaries or borders or challenges for you, the obstacles they're placing your road for you to get your pension, for you to get your obstacle out the way so you can get access to that retirement. If that's what you're going for, just know, right? There's going to be obstacles in either category. What I'm choosing is moving away from this relationship where I work for someone to the relationship where I work for myself. Where people are like, you gonna give up your retirement that you've worked so hard to save, to invest in. I believe that with what I do for me, I'll multiply what it is that I save because of the hard work that I'm willing to forego that I've already went through for others. Because as much as I'm at service to my community, I also acknowledge that I am also at service to a hierarchy, an industrial complex that oftentimes is more eager to see how you are able to give to them than they are to give to you, which is not beneficial for me. It's not mutually beneficial. Being mutually beneficial would mean that I'm satisfied with what I'm giving and what I'm getting. And right now, what I'm witnessing is I've been for so long nurtured, right? I was nurtured for so long that this was the way of the culture, right? You do because that's what you do, not because you pay for it, but because it makes you feel good. But as I've come to realize in my life, well, I want to feel better than what they say I'm supposed to feel good for. Bless you. I want to feel good in beyond the capacity of what they're granting me. And I do realize I live in a capitalistic society where a CEO like Dan Price can become a millionaire and then decide as his business is booming, everyone could get paid the same. That's a revolution. That's changing the world. To see his business still successful and he's granting people a livable wage and that his business is having so much more retention in its employees, that's revolutionary at a time when people are leaving their jobs, right? Before the whole panorama, right? People were switching jobs every 2 to 3 years. He's having tenure that's now going beyond that scope, let alone people just leaving for the sake of leaving because they want to leave, right? I can easily get consumed with all the negative, or I can find the positive, hold on to it, cherish it, and refine it for myself to see how I can make it.
Right.
Because as I said, if my father was lucky enough to meet someone who was involved in illegal activities where that grants you a certain surplus of monetary value, connections, and network, to then leverage all of that to create an opportunity for me to be the beneficiary of an opportunity as an artist, I'd have took it. If I had a parent who was secure enough in themselves to have the education, the expertise to teach others on a collegiate level, which granted me enough security to be able to leave the household and move into a city where I could produce music for a very popular rapper, I'd have done so. If I had the opportunity for my parent to put me in acting classes so I could be on one of the most popular drama shows for teens where I could use and leverage that money to grant me access to a loan to rent some equipment and take some trips to make the connections to be able to be in a position where the world is now at my footsteps. I definitely would have did so, but that's not my journey. That was not my path. I have to chart the course the way that I see fit with what I have available to me. And based off of that, a 401k is now going from being a retirement plan to being a business investment.
That's right.
You just got to find your way. So,
Yeah, and be willing to kind of take a risk on yourself and invest in yourself versus, living in fear that the things you dream up can't ever come true. And, those dreams, are rooted in emotions and needs, unique to individuals. And those needs develop responses of emotion, and those emotions are like beacons that should be used to navigate logic, right? Not disregard logic. Um, and so, like, as we move forward through this this fall season, I think it's important that we figure out a harvest of our own, within ourselves, within our community. That may mean sitting still and harvesting our thoughts and our desires and our plans, and saying, this is where my plans are now, but this is what I want my spring to look like. Right. This is where my emotions are now, but this is what I want my spring to look like. And the single snowflake that melts versus the glacier that melts, right? All depends on, right, how long you're looking at it. And so if you didn't spend a long time watching the same glacier melt, you may need to, reflect on
I almost feel like you don't even need to, I almost feel like you don't even need to finish that sentence. If you can't marinate on that alone, if you can't feel sufficient off of those words alone, because when you said it, see, I was like, let me do my little thing real quick and put my message out before I lose it and capture the moment. But as I heard you say it, I was like, wait a minute. The difference between a glacier melting and a snowflake melting is how much time you take to look at it. This has been episode 67 of the Lyrical Ones podcast. Affluence, shut the game down.
I'll be done.
As we like to do at this time, as we go for hours.
We go for hours.
I'm like, y'all don't need nothing else. Affluent, what'd you say? Say it one more time.
We're gonna go for hours. Ain't nothing else to do. Right, Abe? We going for hours.
Snowflakes and glaciers, everybody.
One.